and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Naurin. In today's bulletin, we will present important news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Biden aims to narrow trust gap with US-Africa Leaders Summit. Scientists say eruption of Hawaii volcano continues to ease. Three dead, one critical in shooting after fight at Chicago bar. Richmond removes its last city-owned Confederate monument. Indiana Lieutenant Governor Kraut joins Senator Brown in governor's race. Hospitalization signal rising COVID-19 risk for US seniors. Golden Globe nominations led by Banshee's Everything Everywhere. With box office bare, Black Panther makes it 5 in a row. Iran carries out second execution linked to anti-government protests. Peru president proposes moving up elections amid protests. Man kills 3 in Rome condo board meeting. China vows to drop some travel tracking in COVID rule easing. Ukraine PM requests air defenses to counter Russia attacks. Death toll in Jersey fire rises to 5, 4 is still missing. USA basketball to play Men's World Cup group games in Manila. Messi, Modric get Argentina, Croatia to World Cup semifinals. And US soccer journalist Grant Wahl dies at World Cup. Now news in detail. President Joe Biden is set to play host to dozens of African leaders in Washington this week as the White House looks to narrow a gaping trust gap with Africa, one that has grown wider over years of frustration about America's commitment to the continent. In the lead-up to the 3-day US-Africa Leaders Summit that begins Tuesday, Biden administration officials played down their increasing concern about the clout of China and Russia in Africa, which is home to more than 1.3 billion people. Instead, administration officials tried to put the focus on their efforts to improve cooperation with African leaders. This summit is an opportunity to deepen the many partnerships we have on the African continent, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said when asked about the shadow that China and Russia cast on the meetings. We will focus on our efforts to strengthen these partnerships across a wide range of sectors spanning from businesses to health to peace and security. But our focus will be on Africa next week. The summit will be the biggest international gathering in Washington since before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Local officials are warning residents to brace for roadblocks and intensified security as 49 invited heads of states and leaders and Biden whiz around the city. The eruption of the Mauna Loa volcano on Hawaii's Big Island continues to ease, scientists said Sunday, reinforcing an earlier pronouncement that the mountain's first flare-up in nearly 40 years might soon end. We have good news to report, Ken Hahn, the scientist in charge of the US Geological Survey at the Hawaii Volcano Observatory, said during a briefing. The eruption is still at an extremely low level at this point. Han said the eruption is contained entirely within the volcano's center cone. The USGS said a small amount of light remained visible at night through a vent in the cone, but the channels below that vent appeared drained of lava. The inactive front of the lava flow may inch northward very slowly as it continues to settle, the agency said. Han said Mauna Loa's eruption appears to be ramping down and that nearby Kilauea has now reached a full pause, with its lava lake stagnant and crusted over. Mauna Loa began spewing molten rock November 27 after being quiet for 38 years. The incandescent spectacle drew onlookers and set some nerves on edge among people who have lived through past eruptions. Sunday's update came a day after scientists lowered the alert level for the volcano from a warning to a watch and said the eruption could be in its final days. 3 people were fatally shot and a 4th was critically wounded Sunday when a fight inside a Chicago bar led to a shooting outside the bar, authorities said. The shooting on Chicago's northwest side came after a fight inside the bar spilled outside onto a street about 2:30 a.m., City Chicago Police Commander Joseph Brennan said. He said someone opened fire and struck 2 men and 2 women before fleeing the scene in a dark-colored SUV. Police and the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office said Ricky Vera, 50 years old, and Mario Pozzuelos, 26 years old, were shot in the head and body and pronounced dead at the scene. Mercedes Tavares, 24 years old, was taken to a hospital and pronounced dead, police and the medical examiner's office said. The second woman, a 25-year-old, was taken to the same hospital in critical condition with a gunshot wound to her head, authorities said. Brennan provided few details Sunday of the shooting, saying the investigation remained active as detectives canvassed the area for surveillance footage and eyewitnesses. No one was in custody and detectives were investigating. The city of Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy for most of the Civil War, has removed its last public Confederate statue. Richmond removed its other Confederate monuments amid the racial justice protests that followed George Floyd's killing in 2020. But efforts to remove the statue of Confederate General A.P. Hill, which sits in the middle of a busy intersection near a school where traffic accidents are frequent, were more complicated because the general's remains were interred beneath it. It took just minutes to free the statue from the base Monday morning, before a crane using yellow straps looped under the statue's arms lifted it onto a bed of tires on a flatbed truck. The statue will be given to the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia. Indiana Lieutenant Governor Susan Crouch formally started her 2024 campaign for governor on Monday and said she would not shy away from Republican Governor Eric Holcomb's record despite discontent among many conservatives over his COVID-19 policies and other actions. Crouch, who was Holcomb's running mate in 2016 and 2020, is joining U.S. Senator Mike Brown in what could become an expensive fight for the Republican nomination in hopes of extending the GOP's 20-year hold on the governor's office. Holcomb cannot seek re-election because of term limits. Crouch announced her campaign in an online video message released just hours ahead of Brown's campaign kickoff luncheon with supporters at a downtown Indianapolis steakhouse. Brown filed paperwork on November 30 with state election officials allowing him to raise money for the governor's race, a move that will forego him seeking another Senate term when that seat also goes up for election in 2024. Coronavirus-related hospital admissions are climbing again in the United States, with older adults a growing share of U.S. deaths and less than half of nursing home residents up to date on COVID-19 vaccinations. These alarming signs portend a difficult winter for seniors, which worries 81-year-old nursing home resident Bertley O'Hara, who said he is vaccinated up to the eyeballs and tracks coronavirus hospital trends as they zoom up for older adults but remain flat for younger folks. One troubling indicator for seniors. Hospitalizations for people with COVID-19 rose by more than 30% in 2 weeks. Much of the increase is driven by older people and those with existing health problems, said Dr. Rachel Walensky, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The numbers include everyone testing positive, no matter why they are admitted, as nursing home leaders redouble efforts to get staff and residents boosted with the new vaccine version, now recommended for those 6 months and older. They face complacency, misinformation, and COVID-19 fatigue. They are calling on the White House for help with an all-hands-on-deck approach. After a scandal and boycott plunged the Hollywood Foreign Press Association into disarray and knocked its annual award show off television for a year, the Golden Globes geared up Monday for its return by showering nominations on the black comedy The Banshees of Inisherin and the multiverse mashup Everything Everywhere All at Once. Martin McDonagh's feuding Friends tale, The Banshees of Inisherin, led with 8 nominations, including nods for actors Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Kerry Condon, and Barry Keoghan. Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheiner's existential action comedy Everything Everywhere All at Once came in second with 6 nominations, including nods for Michelle Yeoh, Ke Huy Quan, and Jamie Lee Curtis. The Globes spread nominations around to a number of Oscar favorites like Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, Todd Field's Tar, while also elevating big-budget spectacles like Top Gun Maverick and Avatar: The Way of Water. Each, along with Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, landed nominations for Best Film Drama. The nominees for Best Film Comedy or Musical were The Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Glass Onion: A Knives Out Mystery, Babylon, and Triangle of Sadness. The show, which will be telecast January 10 and hosted by stand-up comedian Gerard Carmichael, is trying to mount a comeback. On one of the quietest weekends of the year in movie theaters, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever topped the North American box office for the 5th straight weekend, according to studio estimates Sunday. With the release of Avatar: The Way of Water looming, studios opted not to open any new films in wide release. That enabled Ryan Coogler's Black Panther sequel to further extend its box office reign. Wakanda Forever grossed $11.1 million over the weekend, bringing its domestic total to $409.8 million and its worldwide haul to $767.8 million. Wakanda Forever is the first film since Christopher Nolan's Tenet, the 2020 release, that attempted to revive cinemas from pandemic closure in 2020, when almost nothing was being theatrically released, to lead the box office for 5 straight weeks. Now it's time for global updates. The Islamic Republic hanged a man in public on Monday who had been convicted of killing 2 members of security forces, the judiciary's Mizan news agency reported. The second execution linked to anti-government protests in less than a week. Majid Reza Rahnavard was hanged in public in Mashhad on Monday morning. He was sentenced to death for waging war against God after stabbing to death 2 members of security forces, Mizan said. Iran's hanging of another man, Mohsen Shekhari, on Thursday, convicted of injuring a security guard with a knife and blocking a street in Tehran, have been widely condemned by the United States and its allies. Rights groups have said Shekhari was tortured and forced to confess. Amnesty International has said Iranian authorities are seeking the death penalty for at least 21 people in what it called sham trials designated to intimidate those participating in the popular uprising that has rocked Iran. Nationwide protests that erupted after the death of 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman Mahsa Amini on September 16 represent one of the biggest challenges to the Islamic Republic since its establishment in 1979. Peru's newest president, Dina Boluarte, gave in to protesters' demands early Monday announcing in a national televised address that she will send Congress a proposal to move up elections. Boluarte's decision came after thousands of demonstrators took to the streets around Peru for another day on Sunday to demand that she resign and schedule elections to replace her and Congress. The protest turned deadly, with at least 2 reported deaths in a remote community in the Andes, according to officials. Boluarte said she will propose the scheduling of general elections for April 2024. That marks a reversal, as she had previously said she should be allowed to hold the office for the remaining 3.5 years of her predecessor's term. Many of those demonstrating in the ongoing political crisis are demanding the release from custody of Pedro Castillo, the center-left president ousted Wednesday by lawmakers after he sought to dissolve Congress ahead of an impeachment vote. A man opened fire Sunday during a condominium board meeting in a coffee shop in northern Rome, killing 3 people and injuring others, authorities and witnesses said. Rome Mayor Roberto Gualtieri called an emergency security meeting for Monday after what he called the grave episode of violence that has struck our city. In a tweet, he confirmed 3 people were killed in the shooting in the working-class neighborhood of Fayden. The shooting occurred in an enclosed outdoor seating area of the bar called Tu Posto Giusto, or the right place. La Repubblica daily quoted witness Luciana Ciorba, vice president of the condo board, as saying the man entered the bar shouting, "I will kill you all," and then opened fire. Participants managed to disarm him until Carabinieri police arrived. Speaking in a video interview, Ciorba said the man was known to board members and had been previously reported to authorities for making threats against local residents. China planned to stop tracking some travel on Monday, potentially reducing the likelihood people will be forced into quarantine for visiting COVID-19 hotspots as part of an uncertain exit from the strict pandemic policies that helped fuel widespread protests. At midnight, the smartphone app that recorded a person's travel between cities and provinces will be disabled. Another app used to restrict the movement of those who test positive or enter an area with a recent outbreak remains in effect. They are part of a package of pandemic apps, some of which have also been used by local governments to suppress protests. The move follows the government's dramatic announcement last week that it was ending many of the strictest measures, following 3 years during which it enforced some of the world's tightest virus restrictions that included near constant testing, open-ended lockdowns, and requirements that a clean bill of health be shown to access public areas. Ukraine's Prime Minister is appealing for Patriot missile batteries and other high-tech air defense systems to counter Russian attacks, as more Russian shelling was reported on Monday in the eastern regions of Ukraine, where Moscow is trying to make battlefield gains. Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal told French broadcaster LCI that Russia wants to swamp Europe with a new wave of Ukrainian refugees by its targeting of infrastructure in Ukraine that has caused electricity and water outages for millions during freezing winter weather. Millions of Ukrainians have already fled the country since the Russian invasion started on February 24, and there are fears that many more could leave their homes during winter. Thousands of people have died and dozens of cities and towns across Ukraine have been reduced to rubble during the more than 9 months of the Russian onslaught. The number of people killed in an apartment building explosion and fire on the English Channel island of Jersey has risen to 5, and 4 others are still unaccounted for, police said Sunday. Robin Smith, chief of Jersey Police, said specialist teams were continuing a painstaking search of the area in St. Helier, the island's capital, and warned it was likely to be weeks before investigations are completed. There are still a number of residents. We are working on the assumption of 4 that remain unaccounted for, he said. Their families were made aware of this announcement before other islanders. They continue to be supported by special officers. A blast destroyed a 3-story apartment block in St. Helier at about 4 a.m. on Saturday. Smith said the fire was likely caused by a gas explosion, but that has not yet been confirmed. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 15,468.67. The NYSE composite is increased by 177.62 points or 1.16%. Tokyo stock close price is 27,842.33. The Nikkei 225 index is decreased by 58.68 points or 0.21%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,179.0417. The Shanghai Composite Index is decreased by 27.91 points or 0.87%. Hong Kong stock close price is 19,463.63. The Hang Seng Index is decreased by 437.24 points or 2.20%. Bombay stock close price is 62,130.57. The Sensex index is decreased by 51.10 points or 0.08%. Now a look of today's sports stories. USA Basketball will play all its games at next year's World Cup in Manila and won't need to travel during the tournament, assuming the American men qualify for the event. FIBA, the sports governing body, made the announcement Monday. The World Cup is being contested in the Philippines, Indonesia and Japan next summer, and each of those host nations got to pick one team that it wanted to have for the group stages. The Philippines chose the United States, not a surprise given the NBA's enormous popularity there. Japan picked Slovenia, a team led by Luka Doncic, and Indonesia selected Canada, coached by Toronto's Nick Nurse, and should feature a slew of top NBA players such as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray. Grant Wall, an American journalist who helped grow the popularity of soccer in the US and reported on some of the biggest stories in the sport, died Saturday while covering a World Cup match between Argentina and the Netherlands. He was 49. Wall fell back in his seat in a section of Lusail Stadium reserved for journalists during extra time of the game, and reporters adjacent to him called for assistance. Emergency services workers responded very quickly, treated him for 20 or 30 minutes on site, and then took him out on a stretcher, said Keir Rednage, a veteran British sports journalist who was working nearby at the time. The World Cup organizing committee said he was taken to Doha's Hamad General Hospital, but it did not state a cause of death. We are in touch with the US Embassy and relevant local authorities to ensure the process of repatriating the body is in accordance with the family's wishes, it said in a statement. Let's have a look on today's weather chart. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest updates. Millennium TV US and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jago TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.